Well, hello there, you beautiful, beautiful, amazing, wonderful people. Guess what, baby? It's only gonna be the bloody midweek hump, isn't it? The midweek hump, and we all love the midweek hump. And you're looking absolutely damn amazing on this fine, wonderful, wicked Wednesday. Let's get straight into the meat and potatoes. As we've had a drop of docs, that's it, a doc drop in the Idaho 4 case. Here we go again. At least they weren't sealed. More seals than a kiss from a rose. Some of you will have got that reference. Let's look at these docs, shall we? Because this is video 1 of 3. That's it, baby. 1 of 3. We've got some stuff to go over, and I thought I'd break it down into more bite-sized chunks because I know you guys are busy. Well, look at this first. This doc here. Order sealing. State's objection to defendant's offer of proof of alternative perpetrators and defendant's evidence in support of offer of proof. Reference the alternate perpetrator. What does that tell you? Not interested. You might have proof that someone else did this. Who cares? We say you did it, and that's exactly what we're gonna go for. That's it. Nothing else matters. I'm sure there's a song, Nothing Else Matters. I would sing it, but I'd get struck down with furious anger because I'm that good. YouTube would think I was playing it. But anyway, let's jump into the main point at hand, which, first of all, we just need to touch on this, right? Mitigation. What is mitigation, right? The lessening or minimizing of the adverse impacts of a hazardous event. Annotation. The adverse impacts of hazardous, in particular, natural hazards that cannot be prevented fully, but their scale or severity can be substantially lessened by various strategies and actions. So, put simply, in terms of the court procedure, mitigation is where the defense can look at things that have happened that could severely impact their process and potentially the outcome and work in order to repair the damage that's caused, to try and explain some of it. So when when a grenade gets thrown, they can kind of catch it and say, whoa, wait, hold your horses, because it's not what it looks like. Okay? So what we have to understand is mitigation, as time progresses, mitigation changes. It alters, it adapts, because you have to move. You have to bob and weave, because as this sort of procedure, this heading towards trial has taken that fucking long, the things that are getting thrown, they've been ongoing. This has been continuous. It's not that, because the argument here in this doc is that the defence have had plenty of time to deal with mitigation. They've had plenty of time. How much more time do you need? You don't need more. How long do you want? 2 years plus, that's plenty. The problem is again, as aforementioned, the mitigation keeps changing because as time progresses, more stuff gets thrown into the mix. Like the most recent Dateline NBC hit piece, which was literally, 2 weeks ago. So they haven't had 2 years to mitigate the damage caused by, and let's put it as it is, a leak from potentially law enforcement or the prosecution, which that is the absolute definition of misconduct. There is a gag order, an active gag order, which seemingly I don't get it. What are we going to see here? Are we going to see the judge siding with the prosecution? No, you've had plenty long enough. We do not need a continuance. We need to think about getting this done. So I'm telling you now, if you do that, then this is just going to go to appeal, and Brian Coe will win on appeal. That's as simple as that. And it is for the aforementioned reason. It's okay to say someone's had 2 years to deal with mitigation, but they haven't had 2 years to deal with mitigation because all of the stuff that they need to mitigate has been consistently incoming. and the goalposts keep moving. So that's just to simplify mitigation and why their claims that the defence have had long enough to deal with mitigation is in fact hogswash. Complete hogswash. I'm not even swearing. I did that without using a bad word. Hogwash. That's not bad. It's very close to like a Harry Potter situation. And that like hog something. Hogwarts. Anyway, swiftly moving on. Says, while defendant, I'm not going to read all of this, I'm just going to pluck out the important bits. While defendant is fully entitled to due process, yes, he is, absolutely. This court should exercise its broad discretion to deny defendant's 11-hour motion. Basically saying, chucked in at the end. And we're going to, in video 2 later, we're just going to touch on the back end of this alongside the media and how they're talking about it. All right? So, yeah, first defendant cannot show good cause or prejudice. Even under the heightened, non-binding ABA standard he seeks to impose on the court, this counsel's resources and investigation to date have been adequate, even setting aside that the defence team still has more time to prepare its mitigation case. Moreover, Idaho's constitution also grants the victims the right to a timely disposition of this case. The court should give these victims' rights substantial weight in considering the motion. But this, I get it, right? I get it that you do have to take into consideration the victims, which they're talking about the families of the victims. But it's not, they're not the ones whose life is on the line now. Brian Kohberger, it's his life that's on the line. So if you're going to execute someone and he's literally the team around him, because what you've got to consider, Brian Kohberger, right, he's accused of doing a crime and he's got a team around him that are supposedly his legal team, his defense team. Now, you're sitting there as an individual being accused of a crime that you're saying you didn't do. And this team around you, they're turning around saying, well, we're not ready. We're not ready. We haven't had enough time for this. We haven't had enough time for that. So irrelevant of any fucking thing. Irrelevant. I like the way that the court and the way the documentation is kind of gauged. You're pointing the blame at the individual being accused. Brian Kohberger. This is all Brian Kohberger's doing. Brian Kohberger's the one who's trying to delay things. Brian Kohberger's the one who's had plenty of time. Nah, you're missing the point. Brian Kohberger's got a legal team, and his legal team are saying, we're not ready. We are not ready to give him the best chance of going through this procedure, this situation, this system, the legal system, a trial, because we're not prepared. Well, guess what? That ain't his fault. It ain't his fault. It's not his fault that there has been delay after delay after delay after delay caused by the prosecution, not by the defense. I'm not saying that the defense have done every single thing absolutely as, how can I say, as efficiently as perhaps they could have done. Maybe there is things that they could have done for them to be more efficient at what they had to do. But it still doesn't, absolutely still doesn't, take away from the situation that the prosecution have dragged their heels. Consistently dragged their heels. This is quite, the whole principle here is quite a simple one. You accuse someone, you show the defense team what your proof and evidence is of your accusation, and the defense team, they formulate a case or a defense against what's coming at them, so they know. Now, the defense haven't had that entire case for 2.5 years. They haven't had it. It's not like 2.5 years ago the prosecution went, there you go. That's everything we've got. Well, they kind of did, but they buried it, and they even admitted to burying it, saying that the vast majority of what they handed over to the defence was irrelevant. So they purposefully buried their case. And you have to ask yourself, why did you do that? Why did you purposefully bury the case? So that's red flag number one. And that isn't even red flag number one. That's just one of fucking many red flags. But they try to make out in this doc that the prosecution have given everything, and the defence of they've just dragged their heels. But it says, right, the court should give these victims' rights substantial weight. Finally, while the publicity surrounding this trial is a challenge, defendant has not shown and cannot show that continuing this trial will make things any easier. But that's common sense. Common sense should... You can't prove what's going to happen in the future. He's right. He can't show that. It's common sense that as time progresses, the impact of what someone has been told via the media, via what they're watching, it subsides over time. It's not for Brian Kohberger to have to prove it, because that would in effect be condescending, because it's fucking common sense, isn't it? It's like the analogy that I used before when Independence Day came out. Independence Day comes out, all of a sudden there's an exponential rise in people claiming that they're seeing UFOs because of the impact of that film on the public. Do you know what I mean? And that's just that's something not to do with this. That's just the impact of a film about Martians invading and the impact that had on the public at large, and seeing an existential rise of claims of seeing extraterrestrials. So that then filters off over time. And that's the same as this. And what this is striking while the iron is hot. That's what the prosecution are trying to do. They're not fucking stupid. There's a wave and they want to ride it. So they absolutely will throw everything at the wall trying to continue, because they absolutely know, and this is, I will go as far as saying, this is a flat out fact. This is a fact. This ain't speculation. This isn't conjecture like the PCA. This is a fact that the prosecution know that there's a wave to be ridden here and they want to ride it. And if the judge cannot see that as an impartial person, then I would call him out as being fucking biased, and he needs to be removed immediately, because that is common sense. I'm not a lawyer. I am not someone who is, au fait with American law. I will hold my hands up and say I'm a layman, but that does put me in a unique position that I can use my brain and understand that it's common sense to understand that when things go out into the media like they have, it is going to impact the perception, and that could trickle into the jury pool. Because regardless of what you claim you have in terms of procedural protections against this sort of thing, the voir dire process, that isn't going to guarantee 100% filtration of potential issues caused by the aforementioned media barrage that Brian Kohberger has consistently, but albeit right now, he is still seeing in the media. But look, if we just carry on, let's just go through. We don't need to go through the factual background bollocks. I want to go through here, which is the court should exercise a discretion to deny the defendant's motion because he has not shown good cause for a continuance or that he will be prejudiced at trial. Again, this is, in my opinion, this is absolute common sense. They're basically saying deny the motion because he cannot show good cause or potential prejudice. Procedurally, he does not explain why he waited to seek a continuance until after discovery closed. But that's obvious why. They did it off the back end of the Dateline article going out, which that proved that there was misconduct within the system. there was information leaked. Not as media will have you believe that there's a potential leak. There might be a leak. Oh, they're claiming there's a leak. There was a fucking leak. Absolutely 100%. So he has literally got a team that's saying, we're not ready. We have not mitigated this situation because it's only just happened. This situation has literally just happened. How can you mitigate a situation that seems to be the leak of evidence to media by either the prosecution or law enforcement that seems to paint him out as some sort of monster who's done this crime? And he's now got well, how the fuck do we get around this now? How bad does that look? But that's that. Again, I'm not going to read through all of these little bits because there's no point. Defendant's motion is untimely given the procedural posture of this case. The schedule and order granted the parties ample time for trial preparation, and it also set several interim deadlines along the way, including the penalty phase. So what they're basically saying is we've set up everything. We've got a schedule and order that's got everything set in place. This is almost like saying, well, this is an inconvenience. It's pretty inconvenient, isn't it? If defendant was having trouble meeting deadlines, finding experts, or pursuing red flags, he should have sought a discovery extension. Are they fucking kidding? Well, literally, you can go over, they can put loads of stuff, right? They can talk about loads and loads of issues within this situation, but the only one that matters, the only one that really matters is this well, let's look at this. Look, while defendant relies on the death is different mantra and argues that extraordinary measures must be taken to protect his rights, he cites no authority for the proposition that reasonable scheduling orders should not be enforced in death penalty cases. Indeed, defendant recently argued that the state improperly delayed in seeking an extension for time for its rebuttal phase expert disclosures, which is the objection to state's motion for examination of defendant pursuant to blah, blah, blah. The state has not provided the necessary proof of good cause, yada, yada, yada. The same principle should apply to him. Defendant's motion is untimely and weighs in favour of its rejection. Again, what's happening there is there's so many things being attached to it to offer a ballast, if you like, by the defence, that could ultimately shoot them in the foot because they've got loads of things that can argue. This should have been simply, there has been potential prosecutorial misconduct or law enforcement misconduct. There was a gag order. That gag order has been broken. Evidence has been leaked to the media with the sole intention of what? What was the intention? If you're leaking evidence to the media, why are you leaking it to the media? Well, that's a simple answer, and that is to potentially damage and influence the jury pool. That is as simple as that. There's no ifs, no buts, no maybes. Yes, there might be an individual who is getting paid. There's a pay element to it. Do you know what I mean? Maybe there's a rogue who's thought, oh, I can give some of this and hand this over and get myself a bit of wonga in my back burner. Do you know what I mean? But what we're saying that is in a law enforcement. So if we've got a law enforcement individual around this case that we're saying he would be willing to fuck the entire case up to get a few £100 in his skyrocket, then make no bones about it, you should then be asking about the way in which they could do this entire case. Would it be beyond the realms of possibility then that they could maybe fabricate some evidence? Who knows? And if it's not law enforcement and it actually is the prosecution team, who could it be? Who does that leave you with? And again, the question's why. So if it ain't money, then is it a preordained version of events that sees Brian Kohberger walk on a technicality to hide misconduct or things that happen in the dark that they don't want brought to light? They want it left well and truly in the fucking dark. Defendant's purported need to conduct additional investigation is unsupported and does not establish prejudice warranting a continuance. Defendant bases motion on a claim of insufficient resources and the need to conduct more investigation prior to trial, but he has not demonstrated that he is being deprived of anything that he seeks. Thus, defendant's claims about the current state of the defense team's preparations are matters of speculation and not the type of demonstrable reality needed to support a continuance based on defendant's constitutional rights. So they're saying they basically got more stuff they need to look into. This is going to be regarding the potential other person who did it. And what we've got to understand here, right, is this is off the back end of the defense being given 51 terabytes to potentially bury their case because it was weak as fuck. Make no bones about it. If this would have gone to a preliminary hearing, this would have got bounced out at the preliminary hearing. And in reality, it sounds like it should have been bounced out at the grand jury indictment if the words of Jay Logston ring true at all, where they said that they needed more evidence. So off the back end of being given 51 terabytes of information, then the team have to go through 51 terabytes of information, and they have done that. They are getting their way through it. If you didn't want them to go through it because you couldn't be fucking trusted to hand over any evidence that was exculpatory to the client, then come on, you ditched them with a load of shit. They've made their way through it. And all of a sudden, it seems that there could potentially be an alternative suspect. You've turned around and said, well, you're not interested in fucking seeing it. You're just interested in cracking on with this and riding that aforementioned wave. And they're basically saying, well, you're not demonstrated that you haven't got the ability to go through it. Do you know what I mean? Well, they have, because they haven't gone through it. That's as simple as that. And his entire legal team around him are saying, we are not prepared. So how is he supposed to go through a trial with a legal team and say, we're not fucking prepared, mate? It ain't his fault. It's not his fault. Why should he be penalised then for what has happened around him between the prosecution and defence? However much you don't like the guy, do you know what I mean? Even if you're guilty, you must understand that he's still entitled to an adequate defence, and his own team turn around and say, sorry, mate, you're not going to get one. All right, then. Defendant's legal resources have been more than adequate, so they're just, again, arguing that he's got all the stuff that he needs, do you know what I mean? Defendant's expert witness resources have been more than adequate, saying you've had people come in, you've had people come and speak on your behalf, yada, yada, yada. We've moved it. They've gone through all of the bits and pieces. This is the argument. Defendant's counsel's investigation into his life story have been more than adequate, and his reliance on the ABA guidelines is misplaced. Which there is a table at the end of this that goes through it all. I said that a lot of that was kind of boilerplate stuff, which it turns out that a lot of it is boilerplate stuff. But as we go through here, because I'll do the table in a separate video, just so this video isn't just mad long. You know what I mean? Defendant's ex parte filing should not cause the court to grant his motion. Defendant filed ex parte an additional document that purports to outline what new evidence he might seek and what strategies or tactics he might use to obtain such evidence. Initially, the court expressed skepticism that defendant's motion was properly filed ex parte and ordered defendant to provide a redacted copy of this filing to the state for it to address in his response. Defendant then objected to that order, and the state now understands that the court has decided not to require disclosure of the ex parte filing. While the state does not concede that defendant has valid grounds for his objection, it will not address the objection given the court's decision. The state, however, does request that the court has identified a basis in the ex parte filing to grant defendant's motion that the court allow the state to respond to that particular issue, which this is going to be around the alternative suspect. And we have a hearing coming up specifically about the alternate suspect. But again, we won't see it because I'm guessing they'll name someone. The Idaho Constitution's Victims' Rights Amendments is another basis to deny defendant's motion. While defendant's reasons for a continuance are unpersuasive, there is another reason to deny this motion. That's the victims in this case, including the immediate family members of the homicide victims, have the right. So, and we know where that's heading. Do you know what I mean? We know where that's heading. So what we're saying is, in this specific situation, the fact that you've got someone who's being accused of a crime, yet to be proven guilty of the crime, his legal team are saying, we're not ready. The other team are saying, we don't give a fuck if they're ready or not. We just want to crack on, ride this wave off the back end of a leak of information that goes against the gag order. We want to ride that wave. Fuck you. And we should take into consideration the feeling of Steve Gonsalves, for instance, who has been on a perpetual wheel of let's just shoot as much shit out there into the ether as we possibly can and crucify this guy in the public, and alongside that form an army of around 80,000 individuals plus who have turned into a witch hunt. There you go. And it just goes on like that. This doc is consistently ringing the same bell. Despite intense publicity, the court should exercise discretion to deny defendants' motion to proceed to trial using its carefully planned jury selection process. Which this is basically saying, look, we've been there before. We know how to deal with it. There's other cases that the areas have had to deal with. The Vallow case, for instance, these are all high-profile cases. They've all been in the media, and there's been discussions about it. I would say that the cases that they mention in here, like Vallow, for instance, is completely different. Yes, it was in the public eye, but to be fair, it weren't the same as this. This is one individual who the evidence going back to the PCA looks like that was a fucking lie from the start. So it's showing that in order to even get the arrest, that the officers doing the investigation, they were willing to lie to get him arrested in the first place, twisting things and making it look like he was stalking when they fucking damn well knew that he wasn't. And that's what we've seen as this has gone on. You know, the state turning around and washing out and putting out, oh no, we haven't done anything wrong. We haven't done anything wrong. It's all the defence's fault. There we go. It's nuts. And if we just read this last footnote, because the conclusion, it says, for the foregoing reasons, the court should deny the defendant's motion to continue. In this light, it is relevant to consider how the specific jury pool at issue, which consists of citizens from Ada County, may or may not be in fact impacted by media coverage. Local media is likely to continue to consistently report on this case regardless of the trial schedule. The November anniversary of the murders, for example, generates stories. See timeline 2 years after the University of Idaho murders. Here's where things stand. Katie Kloppenberg, Boise State Public Radio News, November 13th, 2024. And then it's got some citations there. But the be-all and end-all of this is that Brian Kohberger is entitled to a fair trial. Now, what we have demonstrated in this procedure is that they have already had to move this once. They've had to move it once because there was Dr. Edelman done his thing and proved that there was bias in the community, which could have impacted the jury pool. And now we've got a situation later on down the line that they've already acknowledged and actually moved the trial. And the question is, do you believe that this is worse now than it was back then, when it was decided that we had to take extreme measures then and move the entire trial from where it was to here? And the answer has to be, yeah, we're in a worse position now. We are in a much worse position. And again, I am saying categorically that the prosecution are well aware of what's happening, and they are looking to ride the wave of this into and through the trial and out the other side. The reality is, you can do that if you want, but there is enough information within court documentation surrounding the preparedness of the defense in order to give Brian Kohberger the best defense that they can. It just doesn't exist. They have proven and had it filed that they are saying they are not ready. And with this latest leak showing potential prosecutorial misconduct or misconduct within law enforcement to purposefully leak information that was protected by the gag order, that violates Brian Kohberger's rights. And there should be, absolutely should be, whether you like it or not, there should be repercussions to that. Because if there isn't, then you might as well ungag the fucking lot, unseal the whole lot. Because what you're saying is the gag order only matters when we want it to matter. Only matters when we want it to matter. If somebody gets hold of it and leaks it and puts it out, well, so be it. Well, there's no repercussions to it. Don't matter. Love you all. Mwah.